The Beverly Hilton, February 1974. The Golden Globes after-party was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers, champagne, Hollywood's elite celebrating themselves. Burt Reynolds stood at the bar, his best actor statue catching the light. He should have been happy. Instead, he felt hollow, because 20 feet away stood Marlon Brando, the Godfather, the legend who made every other actor feel like an amateur. And Marlon was staring at him with undisguised contempt. Burt turned back to his scotch, tried to ignore it. Then he heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. Burt Reynolds. Marlon's voice was thick with alcohol. Box office king, America's heartthrob. Burt turned. Marlon stood inches away, swaying. "Marlon, congratulations on your nomination." Marlon laughed. It wasn't friendly. "You know what's funny, Burt? You just won an award for acting." The conversations around them quieted. People were noticing. "Is there a problem?" Burt asked carefully. Marlon pointed at his chest. His finger jabbed with each word. "You can't act." The ballroom went silent. Every insecurity Burt had ever felt, every critic who'd called him shallow, every director who'd wanted someone serious, came flooding back in those three words. Marlon wasn't done. "You're a movie star, handsome, charming. You make studios rich." He leaned closer. "But acting? You're just a pretty face on a poster." Someone gasped. The crowd pressed in, sensing blood. Burt's fist clenched around his glass. Every instinct screamed to fight back, to defend himself, but his throat had closed, because part of him believed Marlon was right. Burt Reynolds had spent his entire career fighting this exact moment. He'd been a college football player who stumbled into acting. No actor's studio, no method training, just charm and good looks and a desperate need to prove he was more than that. The critics never let him forget it. Lowbrow, commercial, playing himself in every role. And despite being the biggest box office draw in America, despite the money and fame, Burt felt like an imposter. He'd see actors like Brando, De Niro, Pacino, and wonder if he deserved to be in the same room. He'd turned down serious roles because he was terrified of failing, hidden behind comedy and action because it felt safe. Marlon Brando wasn't just attacking his talent. He was speaking Burt's deepest fear out loud. "You're a fraud." The crowd watched, waited, all of Hollywood's elite, witnessing his humiliation. Marlon swayed closer, breath reeking of scotch. "Real acting is suffering, digging into yourself and pulling out truth." He poked Burt's chest. "You don't suffer. You smile for cameras and cash checks." Someone should stop this. Someone should intervene. But Hollywood loved a spectacle. Burt could walk away. That would be mature. But it would confirm everything Marlon said. Or he could hit him. One punch. That's what the old Burt would do. But that would prove Marlon right too. That he wasn't an artist. Just a brute in a tuxedo. "Say something," Marlon demanded. "Defend yourself." And suddenly Burt knew exactly what to do. "You're drunk," Burt said quietly. Marlon blinked. "What?" "You're drunk, Marlon, and you're embarrassing yourself." Burt set his glass down with deliberate care. His voice was steady now, calm. "You want to know why I won tonight? Because I made people feel something. That's what acting is. Not suffering, not torture, connection." The crowd leaned in closer. "You're right," Burt continued. "I'm not method. I didn't train at the actor's studio, but I show up, I work, and I give audiences what they need." "Entertainment," Marlon scoffed. "Hope," Burt corrected. "I give them hope, laughter, escape. You think that's easy? Making people forget their problems for 2 hours is the hardest thing in the world. That's not art." "It's the hardest art," Burt's voice rose, "because it requires thinking about someone other than yourself." The bar landed. Marlon's face darkened. Burt stepped closer. "You want to talk about truth? Here's truth. You're attacking me because you're terrified Hollywood doesn't need your kind of acting anymore. And you know what? You're right. We don't need more tortured artists. We need artists who remember why they started." Someone in the crowd started clapping. Then another. But Burt wasn't done. He turned to face the entire ballroom. Hundreds of faces. The most powerful people in Hollywood. There's a scene from On the Waterfront, Burt announced. The cab scene. I could have been a contender. Marlon's eyes widened. You can't. I'm going to perform it. Right here, right now. No preparation, no rehearsal. And if I'm really as bad as you say, everyone will see it. The crowd pressed closer. This was either brilliant or career suicide. You'll prove me right, Marlon said. Then watch. Burt closed his eyes, took a breath. When he opened them, everything had changed. His posture, his expression, the easy confidence replaced by something wounded and desperate. Terry Malloy, a broken boxer in the back of a taxi. It wasn't him, Charlie. It was you. His voice cracked, raw emotion in every word. The ballroom went dead silent. Not a glass clinked. Not a person moved. You was my brother, Charlie. You should have looked out for me a little bit. Burt wasn't performing anymore. He was living it. Every word connected to something real. His own disappointments, his own betrayals, his desperate need to be seen as more than a pretty face. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody instead of a bum, which is what I am. A tear rolled down his cheek. Women in the crowd were crying. Even hardened directors had wet eyes. And Marlon Brando stood watching something impossible. His own performance, done differently, done better. Because Burt wasn't mimicking Brando's choices. He was making the scene his own, finding new beats, new emotions, the same words transformed. When Burt delivered the final line, "It was you, Charlie," his voice broke completely. Silence. For 5 full seconds, nobody moved. Then the applause exploded, thunderous, people on their feet, screaming, some openly weeping. Burt stood in the center, chest heaving, tears on his face, completely exposed. He'd just proven he could act, using Marlon Brando's most famous scene. But he wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at Marlon. The older actor stood frozen, face pale, the contempt gone, the smugness evaporated, replaced by shock and something that looked like shame. Marlon opened his mouth. No words came. Burt wiped his eyes. I can act, Marlon. I always could. He turned to walk away. Then Marlon's hand caught his arm. Marlon's hand trembled. Wait, he said. His voice was different now, smaller. Burt turned back. Marlon's eyes were wet. That was... He swallowed hard. That was beautiful, the crowd murmured. Marlon Brando never apologized. I was cruel, Marlon continued. I said things I shouldn't have said. He paused. Can we talk? Somewhere private? They walked through the parted crowd to a balcony overlooking Los Angeles. City lights stretched to the horizon. For a while, neither spoke. Do you know why I said those things? Marlon finally asked. Because you're drunk. Because I'm jealous. He laughed bitterly. Jealous of you. Burt stared at him. You have balance. You enjoy acting. You don't torture yourself. You make movies people love and sleep well at night. You think I sleep well? Burt shook his head. I lie awake wondering if I'm a fraud. Respect, Marlon spat. You know what respect gets you? Loneliness, bitterness. I'm the most respected actor alive, and I hate my life. The honesty hung between them. Tonight watching you, Marlon said, I saw something I'd forgotten. Joy. You found joy in those words. I spent so much time suffering for my art that I forgot art should be joyful. He turned to face Burt. I said you can't act. That was the drunk talking. The bitter old man watching the industry move past him. He paused. The truth? You're a better actor than I am, because you remember why we do this. To connect. To move people. Burt felt something shift in his chest. The validation he'd sought his entire career. I'm sorry, Marlon said. Truly, for tonight. For dismissing commercial acting as lesser. For being too proud to see there are many ways to be great. Burt extended his hand. Thank you. Marlon pulled him into a hug. Two legends finding understanding above Los Angeles. When they walked back into the ballroom together, the room held its breath. Marlon raised Burt's arm like a boxing referee declaring a winner. The crowd erupted. This wasn't about winning. It was about two artists finding respect. A photographer captured the moment. Marlon and Burt, arms around each other, grinning. That photo became iconic. By 2 a.m., Marlon found Burt one last time. I'm teaching at the Actors Studio next month. Come guest lecture. Burt stared. You want me at the Actors Studio? Show them there's no one right way to act. Marlon smiled. Keep making movies that make people happy. The world needs joy. Don't let anyone make you feel small for providing that. They shook hands one final time. As Burt walked to his car, he felt lighter than he had in years. The validation hadn't come from an award. It came from being challenged, from proving, to himself more than anyone, that he belonged. The story spread through Hollywood like wildfire. Within days, everyone knew about Burt performing on the waterfront at the Golden Globes party, and about Marlon's apology, about the photo of two legends grinning like old friends. 3 months later, Burt walked into the Actors Studio expecting judgment. He received a standing ovation. He taught for 2 hours about finding truth without torture, about respecting your audience, about joy in performance. When he finished, a young actor asked, "Can commercial acting be art?" Burt smiled. Art is anything that moves people. Whether you're doing Shakespeare or a car chase, if you're honest, if you're present, that's art. In the back row, Marlon Brando wiped his eyes. Over the years, they became unlikely friends. Dinners, conversations about roles, life, the industry they'd shaped. In 1999, after Burt's heart surgery, Marlon called. I saw your interview about the Golden Globes night. Yeah? You said I changed your life. You did. Well, Marlon's voice was soft. You changed mine too. You reminded me why I fell in love with acting. Not the acclaim, the joy. Burt smiled. We saved each other, didn't we? Yeah, we did. When Marlon died in 2004, Burt spoke at his memorial. He stood before Hollywood's elite, many who'd been at that party 30 years earlier. Marlon told me I couldn't act. It was the greatest gift anyone ever gave me, because it forced me to prove I belonged, that my way mattered. His voice broke. Here's to Marlon Brando, the man who insulted me, who apologized, who became my friend. Marlon taught me there's no one right way to be an artist, Burt continued. That respect isn't earned through suffering. It's earned through honesty. He looked out at the crowd. That night, standing in that ballroom, I learned something. The validation we seek from others, we already have it inside us. We just need someone to challenge us enough that we're forced to find it. After the memorial, young actors approached Burt. Mr. Reynolds, what did you learn from Marlon? Burt thought for a moment. He taught me that the artists we admire are just people, broken, insecure people trying to figure it out like everyone else, and that our heroes need us as much as we need them. What would you say to someone who feels like they don't belong? I'd say what Marlon eventually told me. Don't try to be someone else. Be yourself. That's more than enough. Years later, at his own awards ceremony, Burt would tell the story again. How Marlon Brando's cruelty became kindness. How an insult became inspiration. Someone once asked me, Burt said, what the best performance of my career was. I always say it was the cab scene from On the Waterfront at the Golden Globes after party. Not because it was technically perfect, but because it was the first time I acted without fear, without trying to prove anything. Just truth. He paused. Marlon gave me that. By breaking me down, he built me back up. By challenging me, he freed me. The audience applauded, but Burt was thinking about that balcony, that moment of understanding between two men who'd spent their lives hiding behind different masks. The Golden Globes incident changed Hollywood. Suddenly, the rigid lines between serious and commercial began to blur. Method actors started doing blockbusters. Action stars took on dramatic roles. The industry realized there was room for both approaches. Young actors who'd felt trapped by one definition of real acting found permission to explore, to enjoy their work without guilt. Film schools began teaching both methods, emotional truth and audience connection, all because two legends had a very public fight that became a private reconciliation. In 2015, a documentary filmmaker found the photographer who'd captured that iconic image. What do you remember about that night? The tension, he said. Everyone thought they were witnessing a career ending. Then we saw pride become humility, competition become collaboration. He pulled out the original negative. Burt and Marlon, arms around each other, grinning. This represents everything Hollywood should be. Not a competition, just artists supporting artists. The documentary went viral. Young actors posted the photo with captions about finding their own path, about not letting anyone define their worth. Bert's grandchildren called him after seeing it. "Grandpa, you were so brave." He laughed. "I was terrified, but sometimes being brave just means being terrified and doing it anyway." In his final interview before he died in 2018, Burt was asked about his greatest regret. "Not doing it sooner," he said. "I spent years trying to be what I thought people wanted, trying to earn respect from people who didn't respect my approach." What changed? "Marlon Brando told me I couldn't act. Best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to stop seeking validation and start being valid." He leaned forward. "You want to know the secret? It's not avoiding challenges. It's having the courage to look your doubts in the face and say, 'Watch me prove you wrong.'" Did you prove Marlon wrong? No. I proved myself right. That's the difference. I wasn't performing for him. I was performing for me, and that's when I became free. The interviewer wiped his eyes. "You know what's really beautiful?" Burt smiled. "Marlon and I spent 25 years as friends. Real friends. And every conversation, we'd laugh about that night. How our egos almost destroyed something that became one of the best friendships of my life." Burt looked at the camera. "So if someone tells you that you can't, thank them. They're giving you the gift of motivation, the gift of proof." He grinned that famous Burt Reynolds grin. "And who knows, they might become your best friend."